The bass hit first, not the lyrics, not the hook, just bass. Deep enough to vibrate porch wood, loose from nails. Deep enough to shake the aluminum siding on half the houses on Cooper Road. Soldier Slim, blasting through blown speakers, in a candy-painted Cutlass parked crooked near Eli Court. Tug stood shirtless on his mama's porch, 16 years old, braids tight, jaw set, eyes steady. He didn't move to the music. He absorbed it. On the West Bank, music wasn't for dancing. It was protection. It told the world you weren't scared. It told the world you belonged. "Turn that up, you heard me?" somebody yelled from Alexander Keaton. A car rolled slow past Wilbur, windows dark, headlights dimmed just enough to see without being seen. Tug clocked it without turning his head. That's how you survived in Timeclock. You learned to see without staring. You learned to listen between sounds. You learned that quiet was louder than noise. At the front of the neighborhood sat Jimmy's, old brick corner store, faded Coca-Cola sign, metal bars over dusty windows, bulletproof glass scratched cloudy from years of hands sliding cash through the slot. Jimmy stood behind that glass like a king behind castle walls. Tall, beard sharp, gold chain heavy against his chest. Sam stood beside him, leaner, quieter, eyes always scanning the street through reflection. They weren't born here, but they belonged here. Jimmy once stepped between two dudes about to shoot it out over pride. Sam once wrapped a shirt around a kid's bleeding leg and held pressure until EMS arrived. Nobody robbed Jimmy's. Nobody tested Jimmy or Sam. And outside, sitting on a milk crate like it was a throne, was Shorty. Short, dark-skinned, bald head shining under neon, old enough to remember when kids still rode bikes on this block. He sipped black coffee from a styrofoam cup and watched Tug. "You stomping like you famous, boy," Shorty called out. "Ain't even paid your mama light bill." Laughter spilled from the vending machine crowd. Tug smirked, but didn't fire back, because part of him believed Shorty saw something. Shorty had seen everything. Memorial candles on Gary Court, ambulance lights on Cooper, mamas crying in the street. He had watched Timeclock chew boys up and spit their names onto T-shirts. Tug didn't want to be a T-shirt. He just didn't know what else to be. Chapter 2. The Crew. They didn't wake up one day and decide to be a crew. They just were. Kenny, Trill, could talk his way into anything, smiled through trouble. Ramon, fat boy, big laugh, big hands, loyal to the bone. Donald, Reaper. Reaper wasn't loud, didn't joke much, didn't blink much either. When Reaper walked somewhere, energy shifted, and then there was Lil B. Lil B had light in him. That's what made it worse. "Man, we ain't gotta die here, you heard me," Lil B said, one humid night behind Jimmy's, leaning against the brick wall. "We bigger than this." Tug leaned beside him, staring at the street. He wanted to believe that, but belief required evidence, and Timeclock didn't provide much of that. "Houston different," Lil B kept saying. "Opportunity out there." Reaper scoffed. "Opportunity don't come looking for you." Lil B smiled anyway. Some people carry hope like armor. Some carry anger. Tug carried both. Chapter 3. Bourbon Street felt unreal. Neon lights flickering off wet pavement, music pouring from balconies, tourists stumbling drunk into strangers. The crew walked deep that night. Fresh shoes, fresh cuts, energy loud. For once, nobody scanning every corner. For once, it felt like they were just teenagers. "Wassum bitch," Trill shouted, dapping Tug. Lil B smiling different. Free. That illusion lasted 6 seconds. The first shot cracked through music like glass breaking inside your skull. Pop, then 3 more. Bodies scattered. Screams swallowed the street. Tug turned just in time to see Lil B jerk backward, then hit the pavement. Hard. Neon lights reflecting off blood spreading beneath him. Reaper reaching for his waist. Fat boy frozen. Trill yelling. Tug couldn't move. He just stared, watched the life leave his friend's eyes. In the middle of Bourbon Street, under lights that never turn off, something inside Tug didn't shatter. It hardened. Chapter 4. After the lights, Bourbon Street didn't look the same once the music stopped. Neon still blinked, but it felt fake now, like a smile somebody forgot to wipe off after bad news. Police tape cut the street in half. Blue and red lights painted the buildings like a warning nobody could escape. Tug stood back against a brick wall, hands shaking for the first time that night. Lil B was still on the ground, covered now, but Tug could still see him, could still see the way his chest stopped moving. A cop asked Tug something, name, age, where he was from, but the words didn't land. Tug nodded when he was supposed to, spoke when he had to. Everything sounded far away, like his ears were underwater. Reaper was pacing, not crying, not yelling, just pacing like a caged animal. Fat Boy kept repeating, man, 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 like the word might turn into an answer. Trill was on the phone already, voice low, eyes sharp. This wasn't just grief, this was math. Who saw what? Who ran where? Who might come looking? Tug felt it settling in his chest. This wasn't over. This was the beginning. Chapter 5. The ride home. Nobody talked on the drive back to the West Bank. Windows down. Night air thick with humidity and gunpowder memory. The city lights faded as they crossed the river. New Orleans behind them, but not really. Bourbon came with them, riding silent in the car. Reaper finally spoke. They ain't finna play with us. Fat Boy nodded, jaw tight. Trill said, we gotta be smart. Tug stared out the window at familiar streets coming back into focus. Harvey signs, Gretna exits, the road bending toward Timeclock. He didn't say anything, because what could he say? That Lil B was dead, that none of them were ready for what came next, that he felt something inside him closing off. When they pulled up near Jimmy's, the block was still awake. News traveled fast. Too fast. People already knew. Chapter 6. The block grieves. Candles popped up overnight. White ones, red ones, a few with Lil B's name scratched into the wax with keys. Jimmy's store stayed busy, but nobody was really shopping. Folks just stood around, talking low, shaking heads. Jimmy leaned against the counter, face tight. Sam watched the door. Shorty sat on his milk crate like always. But he wasn't joking tonight. Lil B's mama showed up just before midnight. She didn't scream. That was worse. She just stood there, staring at the candles, hands shaking, mouth open like words were stuck inside her. Tug couldn't look at her. He felt like if he did, something inside him would spill out and never go back. Reaper stepped forward. We gon' handle this, he said. Lil B's mama finally looked up. You don't bring my baby back with more blood, she said quietly. That hit harder than yelling would have. Reaper didn't answer. Neither did Tug. Chapter 7. The Funeral. Rain fell the morning they buried Lil B. The kind of slow, steady rain that soaked through black clothes and made the ground smell like iron and earth. Gretna Cemetery filled up early. Too many young faces. Too many old ones that had seen this before. Lil B's casket was small. That hurt more than anything. Tug stood with the crew, hands clasped, jaw locked. Reaper leaned close. This ain't happening to us, he whispered. You hear me? Tug nodded, but inside, something twisted. Because he knew the truth. It already had. Lil B's mama collapsed at the graveside. That sound, raw, broken, followed Tug long after the dirt covered the casket. That was the moment he stopped believing in getting out clean. Chapter 8. The Switch. The days after the funeral blurred together. School didn't matter. Sleep didn't come easy. Every loud noise felt like a gunshot. Every unfamiliar car felt like a threat. Reaper started disappearing for hours at a time. Trill started talking money more than music. Fat Boy stayed close, quieter than usual. Tug felt himself changing, not fast, slow, like rust spreading. The first time he touched a pack, his hands didn't shake. That scared him more than if they had. Harvey nights became routine. Quick moves, quiet money, respect growing, girls noticing the confidence before they noticed the danger. "Was some bitch," Tug would say, half smile, half test. Inside, he kept telling himself it was temporary, just until things settled. But Timeclock didn't settle. It escalated. Chapter 9. Jimmy Knows. Jimmy called Tug inside one night after closing. No customers, just silence and humming refrigerators. "You movin' different," Jimmy said. Tug shrugged. "Everybody movin' different." Jimmy shook his head. "I've seen this before." Sam leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You ain't built for this life," Jimmy said. "But this life don't care." Tug looked at the floor. "What I'm supposed to do? Be next?" Jimmy sighed. "Survival and self-destruction wear the same shoes at first." Those words stayed with Tug, even when he ignored them. Chapter 10. Shorty, don't laugh. Shorty didn't crack jokes anymore. That alone was unsettling. One late night, Tug sat beside him on the curb. "You ever wish you did something different?" Tug asked. Shorty stared out at the street. "I wish I listened sooner." He looked at Tug. "Clock still ticking, boy." Tug nodded, but he didn't move away from the edge. "Not yet." Chapter 11. Rising heat. Money changes how people look at you. Not just girls, not just strangers. Even the block starts measuring you differently. Tug didn't flash it. That's what made it dangerous. He moved quiet. Harvey during the week. Gretna on weekends. Never too long in one spot. But word travels faster than cars on the West Bank. "He getting to it," somebody whispered outside Jimmy's. Reaper heard it. Reaper liked it. "He's stepping up," Reaper said one night, clapping Tug's shoulder. "That's how you do it." Tug nodded, but he didn't feel pride. He felt pressure. Because every dollar stacked came with eyes, and eyes came with problems. Police started cruising Cooper more often. Unmarked cars, slow rolls past Alexander. Stops for nothing. Jimmy noticed first. "They circling," he muttered behind the counter. Sam nodded. Shorty didn't say a word. Chapter 12. Reaper's Shadow. Reaper wasn't the same after bourbon. He stopped laughing completely, stopped showing emotion, started showing up in places before trouble did. If somebody had tension with the block, Reaper knew about it before anyone else. "Respect ain't given," he told Tug one humid night behind Jimmy's. "It's taken." Tug didn't argue, but he wasn't fully convinced either. There was a difference between protection and provocation. Reaper blurred that line, and the block started whispering his name differently. Chapter 13. Gretna Sweep Friday night. Humidity thick, music loud. Then the unmarked cars pulled up, doors flying open. Everybody against the wall. Hands up, IDs checked, pockets emptied. Tug stayed calm, breathing steady. Reaper wasn't there. Again. That pattern didn't go unnoticed. One younger dude panicked and ran. They tackled him before he made it halfway down. Gary sat. That was enough. Searches got deeper. Questions got sharper. Tug walked away clean that night, but the message was clear. They were watching. Chapter 14. The traffic stop. Harvey back road. Windows down. Late. Too late. Blue lights flared in the rearview mirror. Tug's stomach tightened, but his face stayed neutral. "Registration and insurance." "Yes, sir." Officer leaned back, then leaned in again. "You boys nervous?" "No, sir." They searched the car, and that's when Tug realized something. It wasn't his. The weight in the back seat wasn't his. But ownership doesn't matter when it's in your vehicle. Cuffs clicked cold around his wrists. Trill shouting. Officer unmoved. Tug stared straight ahead as the blue lights painted the road red and blue. He didn't feel anger. He felt inevitability. Chapter 15. Parish Intake. Parish jail had a smell: bleach, sweat, still air. They took his belt, his laces, his freedom. First night, Tug lay on a thin mattress, staring at concrete ceiling. Metal doors clanging somewhere down the hall. Men arguing. Someone crying softly. "What you in for?" a voice asked from the next bunk. "Wrong place," Tug said. The man laughed. "That's everybody." Days turned into weeks. Weeks stretched. Time moved different behind bars. Slow enough to think. Fast enough to regret. Jimmy came to visit. Sat across glass. "You ain't your worst mistake," Jimmy said calmly. Tug swallowed. That sentence cracked something open. Chapter 16. Reflection. Jail strips noise away. No cars, no music, no reputation, just you and your thoughts. Tug watched older men with gray beards talk about cases from 20 years ago. Watched fathers miss birthdays. Watched pride shrink into silence. He wrote letters to his mama, apologized without saying the word. At night, he replayed Bourbon. But this time he saw something different. Lil B smiling, talking about Houston, talking about leaving, and Tug finally understood. Leaving wasn't betrayal. Staying stuck was. He made a decision on a cold metal bunk. If he got out, he was done. Not halfway. Done. Chapter 17. Release. The day they opened that gate felt unreal. Air tasted cleaner. Sky looked wider. His mama hugged him like she was trying to hold him in place. Jimmy shook his hand firm. Sam nodded once. Shorty grinned. "Clock ain't break you yet." Tug smiled, but he knew something. The clock was still ticking. Chapter 18. Legit money warehouse in Harvey. Long shifts, steel-toe boots, sweat honest. He started flipping cars on the side, fixing dents, cleaning interiors, selling clean, money slower but peaceful. He slept through the night for the first time in years. Reaper didn't understand it. "Man, you settling?" Reaper said. Tug shook his head. "I'm building." That difference was everything. Chapter 19. Fatherhood. Holding his son changed the air around him. Tiny fingers wrapping around his thumb, heartbeat fast and innocent. That responsibility felt heavier than any reputation. When he looked at his child, Bourbon didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like warning. Chapter 20. The Call. 11:48 p.m. Phone buzzing on the nightstand. Reaper. Tug stared at it before answering. "Wassam bitch," Reaper said low, but there was no humor. Old beef resurfaced, disrespect thrown around Lil B's name. Trill already heated, Fat Boy already in the car. "You still solid?" Reaper asked. Tug looked down the hallway, his son asleep, his girl breathing steady. Jimmy's words echoed. "Break the clock, or let it break you." "I'll call you back," Tug said. He hung up. Silence filled the room, louder than any bass ever was. Chapter 21. The Ride. The car idled outside, engine low, headlights off. Tug stood at his front door for a long time before stepping out. The night felt thick, heavy, like it knew something. Reaper sat in the passenger seat, Trill in the back, Fat Boy driving, nobody laughing, nobody playing music. When Tug slid into the front seat, Reaper looked at him once. "You solid?" Tug stared ahead. "I'm here." That wasn't the same answer, but it was enough for the car to pull off. They rolled down Wilbur Slow, past Alexander, past the same sidewalks they grew up on. Tug felt like he was watching himself from outside his body. This was the fork in the road, and he knew it. Chapter 22. The Confrontation. The house sat quiet at the end of a narrow street in Harvey. Porch light on, windows dark, Reaper's jaw tight. "That's him," he muttered. Tug's chest tightened. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. This was about ghosts. Lil B's name hanging in the air like smoke. They stepped out. The air smelled like rain and gasoline. Voices rose, accusations thrown, old words turned sharp. Then somebody reached too fast. A flash, a bang. Everything exploded at once. Shots cracked through the night. People screaming inside the house. Chaos swallowing reason. And then silence. Wrong person hit. Not the target. Not the enemy. A bystander. A mistake that couldn't be rewound. Tug felt his stomach drop to his knees. This wasn't revenge. This was damage. Chapter 23. Fallout. Blue lights flooded Harvey by sunrise, news vans, police tape, questions flying, names whispered. Timeclock felt the pressure immediately. Jimmy's store got raided 2 days later, not because they had proof, because they needed a message sent. Sam argued with officers. Jimmy stayed calm. Shorty watched from across the street, face stone. Clock speeding up, he muttered. Reaper disappeared. Trill went quiet. Fat Boy stopped answering calls. Tug went home. And for the first time in his life, he was scared of what he might lose. Not himself. His family. Chapter 24. Cracks in the circle. The whispers started fast. Somebody talked. Police knew details they shouldn't have. Movements, timing, positions. Reaper accused Trill. Trill accused nobody, but stopped showing up. Fat Boy swore loyalty, but loyalty doesn't fix evidence. Tug stayed distant, watching, listening, realizing something heavy. The streets don't protect you. They consume you, and when things fall apart, everybody scrambles to survive. Chapter 25. Jimmy's last lesson. Jimmy called Tug into the store late one night. Store empty, lights buzzing overhead. You standing at a crossroads, Jimmy said. Tug nodded. I already made my choice. Jimmy looked at him carefully. Then live with it fully. Don't halfway leave. Don't halfway stay. Sam spoke softly. You can't outrun who you used to be, but you can outgrow him. Tug exhaled. For the first time, he didn't feel pulled in two directions. He felt clear. Chapter 26. Reaper's Path. Reaper didn't slow down. He escalated. Pride took over logic. More tension, more risk. Until one night, sirens, foot chase, gun recovered, charges stacked. This time, Reaper didn't walk. Time caught him, just like Shorty said. Chapter 27. The decision that sticks. Tug stood in his son's room watching him sleep. Small chest, rising and falling, peaceful. He realized something simple. Lil B wanted out. Tug finally understood that wasn't weakness. It was vision. He made a promise that night, not dramatic, not loud, just solid. He would not be another name on a shirt. He would not let revenge raise his son. Chapter 28. The Knock. Late night, 2:17 a.m. Knock at the door. 3 hard pounds. Tug froze in the hallway. Blue and red lights reflecting faintly through the curtains. Or maybe just headlights. His heart steady, not racing, steady. His girl stirred in the bedroom. His son still asleep. The knock came again, louder. Tug walked to the door, paused. The clock was ticking, always ticking. He reached for the handle, and whatever was on the other side, he was ready to face it. Not as the kid on Cooper Road, not as the hustler from Harvey, not as the scared boy on Bourbon, but as a man who chose. The door opened, and the story wasn't over. Chapter 29. Maple Street. The building on Maple Street didn't look intimidating. That was the trick. Plain brick, tinted windows, flag out front barely moving in the humid Harvey air. Investigation Bureau. Tug stepped out the unmarked car, calm. Hands free. Lawyer not present, but his face steady. Inside, the hallway smelled like old carpet and coffee. They put him in a gray room. Metal table bolted to the floor. 2 chairs, 1 camera in the corner. Detectives came in 20 minutes later. 1 older, 1 younger. The younger one leaned forward first. We know you were there. Silence. Tug looked at the wall behind them. "We got statements," the older one said. Fat Boy already talked. That almost made Tug smile. Almost. He leaned back slowly. "Fat Boy," Tug said finally. The detectives watched him close. Tug laughed. Not loud, not disrespectful, just real. Fat Boy would hurt himself before he'd tell you all anything. The room tightened. The younger detective shifted. "You think this a game?" Tug's face went blank again. No more words. They tried timelines. They tried intimidation. They tried lying again. Nothing. 3 hours later, they walked him out, the same way he came in, because they didn't have enough. Not yet, and they knew it. Chapter 30. Time moves. They couldn't hold nobody accountable, not without evidence, and the streets don't write affidavits. As months passed, pressure eased. Not gone, just distant. Reaper wasn't as lucky. Gun charge, traffic stop, wrong timing again. This time the paperwork stuck. Few years. State time. Reaper didn't cry at sentencing, didn't blink much either. Just nodded once when he saw Tug in the back. That was the end of one chapter, and the beginning of another. Chapter 31. A different hustle music had always been around. Now Tug leaned into it. Late nights in small studios. Beats shaking walls the way Soldier Slim used to shake Cooper Road. But this time the energy wasn't reckless. It was focused. He built something. Timeclock Entertainment. Small at first. Just a name. Then a logo. Then a vision. He wasn't just telling stories anymore. He was controlling them. Paco the president came in next. Fast talker, sharp dresser, real street resume. But smarter now. "Slow grind better than no grind," Paco would say, pacing the studio. "We ain't gotta be loud. Just consistent." Paco wasn't just business. He was brotherhood. Rah-rah rolled in heavy too. Loyal. Strategic. Fat Boy stayed close. Still solid, but quieter than before. They traveled small at first. Houston, Atlanta, Dallas, showcases, cheap hotels, long drives. When they hit stages, Tug felt something different than street respect. Applause felt clean. Chapter 32. Back to Timeclock. But every time they got off the road, reality stepped back in. Timeclock still there. Same sidewalks, same corners, same energy. The first night back after a run in Texas, they stood outside Jimmy's like old times. Shorty still on the crate. Jimmy still watching everything. "Y'all making noise," Jimmy said. Paco grinned. "We building something." Shorty sipped coffee. "Just don't let it build you wrong." The applause fades fast when you're back on Cooper Road. Money still needed stacking, bills still real. And when pressure hit, old instincts whispered. Not reckless, smarter, slow grind, better than no grind. Chapter 33. Mika and Barbara. Drama never leaves the block. It just rotates faces. Mika and Barbara had been cool once, until they weren't. Both talking to the same dude, both claiming territory. One night outside Jimmy's, words turned sharp. "You knew he was with me." "He wasn't with you." Voices rising. Phones out, crowd forming fast. Hair grabbed, pushing, fists flying. Fat Boy stepped in first. "Cut that out!" Paco pulled one back. Jimmy came outside, voice booming. "Not in front, my store." The girls broke apart, breathing heavy. Next day, they were back talking slick again. Timeclock loved drama almost as much as music. Chapter 34. Surge becomes raw. Everybody knew Surge. Quiet dude, always around, never loud. Then one day, out of nowhere, he said, "Start calling me Raw." Nobody understood. Raw what? Trill asked. Just Raw. He wouldn't explain, wouldn't clarify. Just Raw. It became a joke for weeks. Was Sam Raw? Raw, you serious? Even Tug laughed. But Surge stayed firm. Identity on the block changes fast. Sometimes you rename yourself before the streets do it for you. Chapter 35. Running again, police still circled sometimes. Old habits kicked in quick. Flash of lights at the end of Gary City. Everybody scattering, jumping fences, cutting through backyards, laughing once they got clear, breathing heavy. That adrenaline never fully leaves, even when you're trying to go legit. Inside studio buildings downtown, trying to land deals, Tug felt the same tension, just dressed different. Record label offices had glass walls instead of brick, but pressure was pressure. You still had to prove something, just with music instead of muscle. Chapter 36, Love in the Quiet. When Tug came home from the road, his girl looked at him different, not because of money, because of growth. She saw the shift, saw the man he was becoming. One night, after a long show in Dallas, they lay together in the quiet of their bedroom. No chaos, no sirens, just soft breathing and city hum outside. She traced her fingers across his chest. "You really changing," she whispered. He kissed her slow, not rushed, not reckless, intentional. The kind of love built from surviving storms, not escaping them. And in that quiet moment, Tug realized something powerful. Success wasn't loud. Peace was. Chapter 37, Different Type of Knock. The knock didn't come at 2 a.m. this time. It came at 9:17 in the morning. Broad daylight, 2 black SUVs parked clean in front of Tug's house. No sirens, no flashing lights, just quiet engines and tinted windows. Tug saw them through the blinds before they knocked. His chest didn't tighten. It cooled. He knew the difference. Local police kicked doors. Feds knocked calm. 3 controlled taps on the door. He opened it halfway. 2 men, suit jackets, despite the heat. Badges flashed quick. "Federal agents, we'd like to ask you a few questions." Not aggressive, not loud. That was worse. Chapter 38. The Long Game. They didn't accuse him. They didn't threaten him. They invited him to talk. "Just a conversation," one said. Tug stood on his porch, arms folded. "About what?" "Patents," the other replied. That word hung there. Patents. They weren't talking about one night in Harvey. They were talking about years, associations, movements, names. They knew about Reaper's case. They knew about Maple Street questioning. They knew about certain phone calls. They knew about Timeclock Entertainment's travel schedule. Not accusing, just showing knowledge. That's how federal pressure works. They make you understand they've been watching for a long time. Chapter 39. Paco reads it sheet. Paco didn't panic. He leaned back in the studio chair and listened. "They not building a case overnight," Paco said. "They building a picture." Ra-Ra nodded. "They watching money." Fat Boy stayed quiet, jaw tight. "They think the label just a front," Fat Boy muttered. Tug exhaled. "It ain't." "Doesn't matter what it is," Paco replied. "It matters what they think it is." That's when the weight shifted. Because federal pressure doesn't kick doors. It freezes accounts. It audits taxes. It questions travel. It interviews neighbors. It waits. Chapter 40. Studio Under Glass. The next few weeks felt strange. Showcases still happening, meetings still scheduled. But something was different. Cars sitting too long outside the studio. Same SUV seen twice in 2 different cities. A call from a promoter asking unusual questions. Bank flagged a deposit. Small things, but consistent. Tug felt it. The long game. Shorty said it best one night outside Jimmy's. "Feds don't rush. They age cases like wine." Jimmy nodded once. "You better be clean for real." Not half clean. Not almost legit. Fully. Chapter 41. Reaper from inside Reaper called from state time. Voice calmer, older. "They sniffing around?" he asked. "Yeah," Tug replied. Reaper chuckled lightly. "They always late." Tug didn't laugh because this wasn't funny. Reaper had nothing left to lose inside. Tug had everything to lose outside. "That life catching up," Reaper said quietly. You either ahead of it or under it. For the first time, Reaper sounded reflective, not angry, not reckless, just real. Chapter 42. The Freeze. The first real hit came through a notification. Account under review. Funds temporarily restricted pending investigation. Not seized, restricted. That's how they apply pressure. Slow squeeze. Paco slammed his hand on the desk. They trying to choke growth? Tug stared at the screen. This what they do. Rah-rah paste. We gotta be airtight. And they were. But airtight don't mean invisible. In Chapter 43, the question, a federal subpoena hit next. Records request, business expenses, travel documentation, contracts, nothing criminal on paper. But paperwork is power. The label wasn't street money. It was sweat equity. Late nights, small venues, independent hustle. But the past didn't disappear just because the future looked clean. Patterns. That word again. Chapter 44. Pressure test. Timeclock Entertainment faced its biggest test yet. Not bullets, not block drama, paperwork, reputation, patience. Some childhood friends backed away quietly. Didn't want their names in files. Surge, still insisting on raw, said it straight. Pressure make diamonds or dust. Tug stayed calm, because panic looks guilty, and guilt is what federal agents look for. Chapter 45. The Line in the Sand. Late night, studio empty. Tug sat alone, beat playing low. He thought about Bourbon, Maple Street, Reaper's sentence, his son asleep at home, his girl believing in him, the block watching, the feds watching. Two different audiences, one past, one future. He leaned forward in the chair and made a quiet decision. No more gray areas. No more just-in-case money. No more old side plays. Full legit. All the way. Because federal pressure doesn't leave room for half choices.